Welcome, everyone. My name is David Wickstrom with Vibro, and we are thrilled to have you here today on this webinar. We're going to be diving into the topic that is crucial for anyone passionate about coffee, Limescale. Joining me today, two experts from Vibro, Maria Cleaveland and Anastasia Chovan. I will get to their bio in a minute, and they'll talk about the coffee equipment and Limescale, and we will explore how it'll affect your equipment and what you can do about it. For those watching, we will be recording this webinar and provide it to you after the event. Couple of housekeeping items for today. Should Maria or Anastasia touch on a point we might want to explore further, we may pause and discuss. I encourage you all to add questions and comments in the box. I will be reading these questions for Maria and Anastasia throughout our conversation. I will also be taking notes as they speak as a reference point for today. Today is meant to be fluid in content and conversation. And yes, I totally played on words. So as I begin to read their bio, I'm going to bring them onto the stage. Um, there is Maria. There is Anastasia. I'm going to start with my dear friend, Maria Cleveland. Maria, I'm going to read your bio so I don't miss a thing, and that's really important. Maria Cleveland is a food and beverage and hospitality professional with business development, strategic planning, finance, and operations expertise. A veteran of the early specialty coffee scene, she's built a wholesale and licensing business at Starbucks, Peet's, and Equator Coffees. Notably, Cleveland managed Starbucks' initial expansion into the U.S. airports and brings an entrepreneurial spirit to every project she embarks upon. Currently, she advises Brewbird, a venture backed company reinventing single serve coffee for the 21st century, and serves as sales director for the Americas at Urnex Brands, the global leader in specialized cleaning for the coffee sector. In her roles, Maria advances sales with technical acumen while advancing gender equity in her volunteer leadership positions. Thank you. She is a member of the board of directors for the U.S. Women in Coffee, a chapter of the International Women's Coffee Association, and recently served on the leadership council for the Coffee Technicians Guild. In 2019, she started the Lift and Learn workforce development platform with help from a broader coffee community to help train the next generation of coffee technicians. Impressive, Maria. I'm going to get to our friend Anastasia and we'll get right in. Anastasia Chovan has a diverse work experience in sales, marketing, and project management. She currently serves as the vice president of professional sales for Professional Filter at Vibro, where they have developed project work plans for business development and identified obstacles and alternate solutions for project goals. Prior to this, she worked as a manager securing multi-million-dollar projects at Marco Beverage. Anastasia also serves as also did serve as brand and marketing director at Urnex USA Corp, and was responsible for launching new products in the U.S. market. Additionally, she worked at Sweetbird USA as a director of sales, setting up a national distribution network and launching an international brand. You both have these impressive resumes. I am so thrilled to talk about Limescale with you today. So, Anastasia, Maria, welcome today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for having us.
You guys ready to get in? Let's talk Limescale.
Let's get in and talk about Limescale.
Let's go.
All right. I love it. Anastasia, I'm going to start with you. And I'm a layman in the Limescale world, so I need you to really educate me. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is Limescale and how does it form?
That's a great question. Let's start with we have a really great slide to kind of show what's in a drop of water. Can you bring that up, David?
Yep. Why don't you keep talking while I'm doing that?
So in all water, where water comes from, the source water, whether it comes from the mountains or it's source water or it comes from a lake, there are minerals that are in water. And this is a really great diagram showing the different minerals that could be in a drop of water in different amounts. So we have calcium that's in water and hydrogen carbonate. And those two minerals not only have taste associated with them, together when they're heated and the mineral falls out of suspension, that is Limescale, those two minerals. There's other minerals in water too that have taste associated with it, is magnesium, sodium, potassium, sulfates, and chlorides. But the ones that cause the most damage to espresso equipment and cause limescale are calcium and hydrogen carbonate.
So is this common in areas with hard water that you see a lot of the lime scale?
It is. And so it's common in places where you have hard water or places where hydrogen carbonate is in high amounts or calcium is in high amounts. And it can actually, what people don't really realize is that water is seasonal.
Ah,
So the water test that you do for this, which is temporary hardness, can actually change through the seasons. For example, it could be different in the winter versus the spring versus the summer versus the fall, depending on how much water is flowing through the rocks, the source water where it's coming from, and how the water is also being basically treated in the treatment center.
Yeah.
so so does lime scale only affect coffee machine? Does it affect all systems?
It
Yeah.
affects everything. Sorry, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can jump in there. And just to add to what Anastasia was saying in terms of water being seasonal, in my work with Urnex and then earlier with other coffee companies, I have been in certain regions that go from well water a certain time of year to then spring water, depending upon the season, right? And so that's why you could have a situation within 6 months that your machine didn't have any problems with the minerality um, causing short potting, and we'll go through a lot of this, but it can change throughout the year. That's the thing I think we need to drive home to those that are tuning in, is that it's not a one and done.
Ah.
And right.
And Maria, am I also hearing too that you need to plan ahead? Meaning, okay, it's fall. This is the way the water source may look and may look different in the winter and springtime. So really, to
Yeah.
not only think about today, but think in the future and prepare that way.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I think that I've really respected about what Vivero has been bringing to the marketplace is, for years, folks would put in a water filter, they'd mark it with a Sharpie of when it needed to be changed, and then they would blow it off and not change the filter, even if and so when I saw that there is a flow meter that you can actually, Anastasia, you want to talk about a little bit about the flow meter?
So we recommend the first step basically is testing the water to identify what you're dealing with in water hardness. Because that's the first thing we get people asking all the time: what type of water filter should I, work with or should I use? And the question really comes down to what's your water. And one common thing that people believe is that, or understand, is the TDS amount. So miscommunication with TDS is the total dissolved solids, but all that is basically a snapshot of what basically the hardness is in the water, what the minerals are in the water, but it doesn't really tell you what's in the water. So there's different degrees of minerality in the water and different weights. And so TDS really doesn't give you a solid idea of how much hydrogen carbonate and calcium are in basically creating limescale. So that's why basically testing specifically with a temporary hardness test will give you a better idea. From there, you can literally figure out what filtration system you need to use. There's carbon filters that basically don't do anything for minerality, which is a common misconception. If I put a carbon filter on, it's going to treat the water, and it doesn't. You've got ion exchange filters, which we use, and softening filters, and then you've got reverse osmosis filters. So that basically determines, once you figure out what filter is the right filter, then is what flow meter set up. How long is the filter going to last for? Because the first step is getting the right filter on the equipment based off the water test. The second part is changing the filter in a timely manner so the water filter is not exhausted and it's actually doing something. Because, for example, NRA show is happening in Chicago next week, and there's a little cafe next to the Virgin Hotel that has had the same water filter. Yes, I'm calling you out. Since 2018, you've had the same water filter, Brita water filter, or sorry, Vivero water filter since 2018. I can guarantee you that water filter is doing nothing for that espresso machine right now.
Yeah. And David, you can probably maybe bring up a slide that I provided you as a way that our users can get an idea of a visual indicator of if the filtration is exhausted, right? Because there's ways that you can look at your coffee equipment or even your house. So when we're talking about descaling, where Urnex comes in is if the water's not properly filtered, what's going to happen is that you're going to have minerality come out of suspension. So when you heat the water up, then it's organic chemistry. I won't get totally into it, but the minerals precipitate out of the water. And what do they want to do? They want to bind themselves to the metal, okay? Any metals. And so they will bind themselves to water, to heating elements, to different parts of metal inside either the coffee brewer, the milk steaming boiler, or what have you. And so what's happening there is that is then causing the need to remove that minerality off of the boiler so that it can get to the proper temperature. And then the worst thing that can happen is then you have orifices that are clogged because of the minerality. And oftentimes I get users are saying to me, well, I cleaned my machine. I said, okay, kids, hold on. Okay, are you cleaning the water or the minerality from the boiler? And we call that descaling, meaning we're using an acid formulation, be it citric acid, sulfamic acid. We have, professional grade products that need to be in a really ventilated area because we don't want you losing brain cells if it's not in a ventilated area. But that would be our DesCal Pro. But that is, to remove then that minerality from inside the machine, okay? And then the second step that folks often, get confused is then cleaning the system is different, okay? If I'm cleaning the coffee oils off of the portafilter handle or the dispersion screen or inside the brewer, that's cleaning. And we're then using alkaline formulas that then will lift off then the fats or the oils rather that are in the coffee, because right when you roast coffee, there are then oils that come to the surface that bind themselves to metal as well. So who knew that now in the coffee industry we're going back to 11th grade chemistry class of you have acids that remove minerals, and then you have alkalines that then take care of oils, fats, or bacteria. So it's on one side of the the spectrum of a pH, acid and alkaline. Just a little chemistry class for us today.
Hey, Maria, you touched on something, and this could be for both of you. I just wrote it down because I think I might have gotten a C- in chemistry. You talked about minerals out of suspension as they're
Yeah,
entering the machine. Talk to me about that. That was an interesting phrase you commented on, and what
sure.
I think it was is they're trying to find something to latch on to. But
That's
could
right.
you expand a little bit more on that?
That's correct. So as Anastasia was mentioning, you've got minerals that are in the water, such as magnesium or calcium. And
The
when
water drop, think about that water
in
drop.
that water drop, right?
Yep.
And so when the water is heated to say 200 degrees, 202 degrees, or even 204 degrees, then it cools down, right? The heating element is not at that constant temperature. It's always, going to a low point, heating back up, coming back down. And when you have then the change of temperature, that's when the particulate comes out of suspension and then wants to bind to a piece of metal. Additionally, the other things in coffee systems that right, I like to say that milk, back as a kid, gives you strong bones. Same thing goes with then the calcium that's in cow's milk. Is when you're steaming milk, you also then have that minerality that will bind to then the steam wand and clog it, as it were. And so you need acid formulation to remove those as well. So yeah, really good question. And it's that change in the temperature. So in milk systems you have, or in coffee systems, let's talk about a filter coffee machine. You have And maybe you want to go to the next slide, and I can show a couple pictures here. So in a filter coffee machine, you have water coming from an inlet valve. It's going into a big container with a big heating element inside, and that's where you have temperature, liquid level probes that it's heating it up, and it's coming back down, and it's hopefully staying at a constant temperature, because really we want to be brewing the coffee at a constant temperature, so you're extracting all the really wonderful, yummy flavors out of that coffee and leaving behind, the over extraction that you don't want. So in this visual, I'm showing on the left-hand side a spray head, right, which is then the water is going to get sprayed over the bed of water in a certain dose, right? And what you're seeing there is very small holes that are restricted by the scale. And so oftentimes folks are like, wait a minute, I set the brew for 1.5 gallons, but now it's only dispensing a little over a gallon. What's happening? Well, the little holes are being then restricted by the minerality. So a very important tool for coffee professionals is a very expensive tool. It's called a paper clip. You take the spray head out, and you get the holes unobstructed with a paper clip. But then also, this is a very hot job. You're gonna then have a hole that goes back to the boiler, and there's actually a spring. But be careful, put some gloves on, because when you go all the way back, you have 200-degree water that's coming back onto your hand. So that's kind of for the filter coffee equipment. Then on the right-hand side, you're going to see, everybody can be a coffee technician, because like if you at your house, you have white around your
Plants.
your
Plants.
Yeah, exactly. So this is actually minerality that is on a faucet on a brewer. So that's indicating to you that your filter's spent. It's time to change your filter.
This is also a good visual too, to kind of imagine, what this gunk, this minerality that's, on this, on this spout, on this, brew head that's in the water, actually impacting your coffee. So we do a lot of water tastings, we training basically of how the minerals in water can impact basically the taste of coffee or tea. Because just so you see these here visually, those are actually in the water, and they're actually blocking how the coffee tastes. And so this is a really good visual that like what you're actually seeing is actually happening, and it impacts your coffee. So you're not putting the proper water filter on. You're actually not only harming your equipment, you're also, if you're spending a lot on coffee, which everybody is right now because of the C market, you're actually impacting your coffee as well. You just don't see it happening. You're tasting it.
Well, and Anastasia and Maria, it doesn't sound like you need a chemistry degree to understand and manage this and take care of your own property. You call in the professionals when you need the espresso machine fixed or worked on, but like water maintenance seems like that's something anyone could do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step is to basically test the water, and there are very easy tests. I mean, the water industry has tried to make this a very complex thing to make them so they're the experts, but we do offer at Vivero temporary hardness tests, are really easy to use, total hardness tests, which are really easy to use. We have test strips for things like iron and chlorides, which can also impact your machines and the way the water tastes. But we've tried to make water as simple as possible. We also have an online, basically putting your water test numbers to tell you what type of water filter you need. It's called a product selector tool. And we also have a capacity selector tool where it'll tell you how long the water filter will last, and even send you an email to say, hey, change my water filter. So there's a lot of tools out there, simple tools that have been in the market for a really long time. It's just a matter of education and understanding how to use them, but being your own advocate for your equipment. I mean, things are very expensive right now because of stainless steel. And so understanding what type of water you're dealing with, do you have the right water filter, and maintaining yourself is just like, changing the oil in your car. I mean, if you've paid for, $20,000 for a car or $50,000 for a car, you're going to take the time to make sure you change the oil. and the filter in the car. Well, the same thing is true for this espresso machine. Espresso machines cost almost as much as cars do now, and sometimes more. So you want to basically be your own advocate and make sure that the water is tested. And it's not just a one-time situation. You need to test the water on a seasonal basis because it does change. I think that's the biggest takeaway, is to understand that water is seasonal and it is changing because of climate change. We're seeing chloride levels rocket through the East Coast, chloramine, which is a disinfectant, causing valves and plastic to disintegrate. So there's a lot of changing of the water because of climate change now too. It's becoming very important.
And
Yeah.
that lands
And
in, oh
Dave,
yeah,
and
go ahead.
I
Yep.
do want to add that it is so simple to change water filters. This is not hard stuff. I mean, let's put it this way. If you can switch out, like I'm talking in a food service situation, if you can switch out your bag in a box for your soda machine, you can change a water filter. This is not something that I think that needs to be, you need to call in a technician. And I also recommend that you always have backup filters ready to go. I've been in situations where cafes have been rendered, you know, closed for business in terms of their filter coffee or their espresso, because there's construction happening in the neighborhood and there's major banging, and you've got old pipes, and then that can clog a filter. So this is a very inexpensive way, as Anastasia was saying, for you to keep the engine of your business humming along.
Yeah, we've made Vivero. One thing that we really have done is we've basically made the education available. So we have an online Lipis online training where we have videos to show you how to change the water filter and the heads, how easy it is to install and change the heads. So we're putting the information out there for people that want it. We also, all of our distributors are actually technicians, and that's on purpose. We basically work with a technician distributor group to understand, when the filters work and what filter that you actually need for the water conditions. So we're not just trying to sell you anything, because one of the things we see is people either buy too less of a filter, like a carbon filter, and they actually need the filter to deal with minerality, or they go too far and buy a very expensive reverse osmosis system, which they don't maybe need. They could use something, a point of view system instead, with a different type of filtration. So it's understanding the water is your friend, so you can actually save money, not just the first time of installing it, but basically later on too, of changing the filters in the future.
I love it. Maria and Anastasia, I know we said we'll wait on question. This question just came up, and I just absolutely love it. Fabrice asks, is chloramine also bonding similar to that of calcium/magnesium? Is the bonding properties the same?
No, so basically chloramine is a disinfectant that's used in treatment plants. It's used basically primarily on the summertime when you're dealing with drought situations. So it's used to stay in the line longer, and it's also used to deal with organics that are in the water. For example, those used a lot of times in Southern California because during the drought, the water is sitting in the Colorado River for a really long time, picking up a lot of minerals, a lot of organics. So they use chloramine to basically deal with whatever's in the water. It can actually really cause a lot of damage to plastic. So what it does is it kind of, think of almost like an acid. It starts to basically just disintegrate like valves, plastics, anything that is fairly fragile in the machine. It's really, especially super automatic machines, it's really destructive for any kind of tubing or gaskets. But it's different than how calcium binds to metal. It's a different type of issue. Just like chlorides, which are salts in the water, that's actually a mineral. Chlorides will actually cause pinholes in the boiler, and chlorides are naturally occurring in water. Basically, they're salts, chlorides, and they will cause basically a pinhole situation in the boiler if they're too high. So there's different types of things in the water that can cause different issues, and so you need to basically treat the water for what those. And they actually, chlorides will increase during the wintertime, and chloramine will actually increase during the summertime.
That's fantastic. Fabrice, great question, Anastasia. Thank you. I think it's kind of a natural like progression here, Maria. this is for you, and we're talking about prevention. Um, what is a general guideline as far as how equipment should be descaled and
Yeah.
managed?
Okay. Yeah. Why don't you? I have a slide that you could kind of move to, and because I want to walk through some of the things that are going to happen to your
Yeah.
machines if you don't actually descale. So typically, if it's in a commercial situation, it's going to take time, right? Because you need to empty the water from the boiler. You then need to, we have both liquid and powder. If it's a powder, you need to use warm water to dissolve the solution, Descal. We have it both in liquid and powder. So you're gonna have to use warm water and then pour it into the boiler, and then fill it up with water, and then turn it on and let it then remove the minerality, and then rinse it out. But I've seen times where, you have stalactites and stalagmites, it looks like you're going spelunking, you're going in a cave in there, and they have to get in with a screwdriver. But then be careful if you're then using a screwdriver to get the product off the side of the boiler, because you don't want to then pierce the stainless steel, because then when chloramines come in the winter, then that little pierce inside your boiler is going to then start to rust, and then you're going to have a pinhole, and then you're going to have a failed boiler. So this is all kind of like, I'm just trying to scare you straight to filter your water properly. Okay, because I don't know if our little PowerPoint there is it's animated, but if you can kind of see if it'll click through. But okay, let's think about the journey of your perfect water, or your somewhat imperfect water that has been properly filtered, coming into the machine. So what's happening? You've got water in an area that should be nice and clean inside, but you've got a liquid, a temperature sensor that is telling the board that, okay, I'm at 200 degrees, leave me at 200 degrees. Okay, but if you then have minerality on that temperature sensor or the liquid level probe, it's not properly communicating, right? So you're going to get it too hot or too cold. So that's a bad situation. Okay, next up, you've got calcified components that are going to adhere to the heating element. So then that expensive $1,000 heating element is going to struggle to work, and it will fail faster. Bummer. Okay, not fun. The other problem is then if the temperature probe and the heating element are not in sync and talking to each other properly, the control of that will be off, and you'll have something called temperature surfing. And so then you're either extracting your shot of espresso too cool or too high. And so then that's going to affect the flavor of the extraction, or the flavor extraction of your coffee as well. Temperature surfing is no bueno.
And
Additionally, hold on. You have
yep.
another question, David? I see you nod. You want to jump in. You have more
I,
questions.
I have a question, because can I'm going to ask it.
Ask it.
You're talking about coffee, so am I to understand you need uniformity if you're wanting to pull an espresso shot? Meaning,
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
running 12 cups of coffee in a row, you
Yeah.
need that cup to be it.
Yeah.
So
When I started in this business a minute ago, just a minute, as long as the heat, as long as the brewer was like, I don't know, above 190, we were happy. Okay, 190 to 202. Well, in the late aughts, 2007, 2008, there was something called PID, which then was using algorithmic control of the temperature to within a tenth of a degree. And so we now have people that are cuppers. I'm an okay. Anastasia and I can hold our own on a coffee cupping table. We're okay. We got tongues, we got palates. But yeah, it's temperature stability is important. And let's face it, we have a prevalence of coffee competition in convenience stores, in QSRs, in cafes, Everybody is fighting for market share.
Ah,
And so the dollars and the delights are in the details. And maintaining your equipment, total equipment care, including then the proper filtration and keeping that machine running, is translates to good business practices, but it's financially important. I have a good friend who's now retired, says that, often operators are going to trip over dollars to pick up nickels. They're going to save $200 on the water filtration, but then their machine's going to be down on a busy Saturday and they're going to lose $5,000 in sales. And oh, wow, also giving their customers the opportunity to try their competitor. Perhaps not how I would like to use my time and my efforts.
Yep.
And to build on that, again, I've been like Maria, I've been doing this for almost over 25 years. And, we see people, spend a lot of time on, roasting the coffee just perfect. Well, first they're sourcing the coffee, very expensive coffee. It's getting more expensive. You have roasting the coffee just perfectly. And then, buying this extremely expensive grinder, extremely expensive machine and doing all these things, but not basically making sure that the water is right, testing the water, not making sure that the water filter is being changed, and then not making sure the preventive maintenance, basically the machine's being descaled or treated properly. So we see it all the time. And it's not just in restaurants, it's not just in food service, it's in regular cafes. I mean, I've gone and paid, I'm happy to pay, $5 for a cup of really good Panama Geisha or more. But when I get that cup of coffee and it tastes off, which a lot of times, unfortunately, it does, the first thing is a question I have to ask now, is it the water? Is the water been treated? Is the water the right, mineral composition to make this coffee taste the best it can? Has the machine been, maintenance? Like those are all things which a lot of times is why I drink coffee at home because I know what the water is that I'm using, but it's the devil's in the details. And water is it's becoming more and more important because of what's happening in water. I mean, you can't turn on the TV or the, radio or your news thinking about, what's going on with water, with, forever chemicals, with plastics. I mean, the water is in the news all the time because of what's happening in the environment. And that's something to keep to think about when you're basically, treating your coffee. So it's such a precious thing. What about all the things that are surrounding it? 98% of coffee is water.
Yeah.
And one other thing I wanted to add, I think this graphic it tells a million stories as well, is you have then the potential for the water inlet valve being blocked, the outlet valve being blocked. And, there is if the inlet valve is blocked, then you could have a situation where you're heating the element in a dry situation that's going to blow it out. I've also seen very corrosive water that will then just put a hole in the heating element to make it fail. So those are some crazy things. And let's not forget about our tea drinker friends as well, which is, they're totally important. And you think that coffee's nerdy? I mean, the temperature levels that you're supposed to be brewing teas from a tisane, all the way up, to a green tea, oolongs, and then hot water for the black teas. We could, go into a water dissertation about teas as well. But let's face it, the water spigots in a commercial situation are important then for brewing tea. And then if that spigot is blocked because of minerality, then your servers are bummed out. They're like, oh my gosh, somebody just ordered tea and I'm gonna have to spend 5 minutes getting the water to dribble out of this spout, to fill up a teapot. So I think I'm just encouraging leadership teams and operators to just take care of their frontline team members, to give them the tools that they need to do their job.
And Maria and Anastasia, is this something around the training that could be, let's just use a restaurant, high-end restaurant. Is this something where this type of maintenance, it could be a line manager, or you could just, have a day with the team where you're training them the ways to keep the maintenance going and how to clean, et cetera. Is it that easy? Is it, I hear
Yeah,
it.
it's quite easy. I would say that in oftentimes in fine dining restaurants now, you have lead baristas. That's a role, right? It's not just a random back waiter or busser that's like, oh, you make the cappuccino now. So this is something that's been prevalent over maybe the last 10 to 15 years is lead baristas. And I think that for them to own their role and own their equipment and take the responsibility for learning how to switch out the filters. And Anastasia and I have been doing these community-based events called Lift and Learn as a way to encourage people to cross-train. And it's not complex tech work. There are a lot of preventative maintenance things that our frontline team members can be doing.
One of the things we did just 3 weeks ago, the SCA workshop on basically how water impacts coffee, and a simple exercise of basically taking, 3 waters, basically tap water, filtered water, and, very low mineral water like RO water, and tasting the difference, and then taking those 3 waters and making coffee or tea. That something simple like that to basically, have your team taste the difference. And it really is amazing when it's blind or when it's open, they can see what it is, for them to taste the difference on how water impacts coffee and tea in the 3 different ways. It really does open their eyes, and they're like, oh, we really need to have the right water. And that's really the step one, because, water filtration is the unforgotten hero. It's underneath the bar. And like, people just send a water filter with a machine. They don't know if it's the right one. The water hasn't been tested. It's literally, and then it never gets changed. Like the one in the Virgin Hotel, that cafe that's probably still there from 2018. It's literally just, I'm there trying to do its best job, but it does need some help. And the first thing to do is to train people, just like wine. I mean, we spend so much time on, beverage, and this is, impacting, again, 98% of coffee is water. I'll say it again. So understanding that water is not only impacting the equipment and how it functions, but it's also impacting the minerality, how it interacts chemically, again, back to chemistry class, your coffee and tea, because if the wrong minerals are in there, it's blocking that taste profile. So that's we see so much, eyes open when we sit down and do these team clean water tastings at Lift and Learn. And then take them through the process of, this is why you want a water filter, and this is how you want to clean your machine, because it's the whole life cycle of basically the machine and the process and making the coffee, and educating is so important.
I'm struck by the fact, I believe food service is art. I will always stand by that, and because it's true. And hearing the both of you talk, you could be at a fine dining establishment, have the best meal of your life with your loved ones, and you're served tap water that tastes awful and coffee to follow that's awful, and it's like they're bookmarking what is otherwise a great experience. So what I'm hearing is, pay a little more attention, maybe spend a little bit, but not a lot up front. And then that could be the whole experience of quality water, quality coffee, good filtration will affect everything in your business too.
Right. Yeah. And this is not even to, go into, people are fanatical about their soda, right? And those systems as well. So I'm sure that your professional filtration is not just for, coffee equipment, right? But it's for
Yep.
for broader food service systems as well. Yeah.
That's great. Maria, I'm are there other slides? Okay, that's just you. I'm going to
That's
remove
me.
this.
That's
Um,
fine.
um, I had a couple questions while you were all talking. Before I do that, okay, Chris, if anyone does have any questions, I've been trying to take notes while Anastasia and Maria are talking. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer that. Maria or Anastasia, I'll throw it to you right now. Is there anything that we talked about that we need to expand upon? Anything else you want to cover around Limescale, et cetera?
No, I'm just want to offer our support. Urnex Brands is proud to partner up with Anastasia and the team at Vibro, because it really it begins and ends at education, and it shouldn't end. And I think that if we're not open to learning from one another, then you're doomed to fail. And so I know that in the follow-up email to our participants, our contact information, if there is ever anything that we can be of service at Urnex Brands. We do work with tons of OEM partners, but also, consumers and retailers alike to help them, be delighted by the beverages that they're consuming. And oftentimes it comes down to just the most simple misses in terms of steps of excellence in terms of brewing or cleaning the equipment. And so I've really dedicated my efforts in terms of education. And there's never a silly question. I often say to my partners, if you merely take a picture of the machine and send me a text message and call me on the telephone, I can walk you through what you need to do. And often I say to my colleagues is that I'm a consultant with 30 something years of experience in the coffee industry, and Urnex pays my invoice. So that is really where we pride ourselves, is to be a value add partner in the vertical.
And same with Vivero. I mean, I think the way we differentiate ourselves from other water filtration companies is that the education side. We try to make it as simple to understand water and what's probably impacting your coffee or tea or your cafe. If we don't know the answer, we do have a water lab in Germany that we can utilize. And we may not have the solution, and we will basically send you in a direction. But education is the first part, understanding what's going on. We offer an online water training session. Basically, 6 modules of water. We have white papers produced by our water lab in Germany that we're happy to share. But education is really the pillar to first understanding the difference, like for example, between water testing and TDS. Like, what does that mean? And we're here to help explain that, and we partner with Urnex on that, with events like Lift and Learn, SCA workshops. But that we're here to support and answer questions with our distributor technical team as well.
I love it, Anastasia. And Maria, we have about 20 minutes or so. Fabrice had another question, which I think is fantastic and can help others listening. And I'm just going to read it. Over the time, do you see a further increase in the concentration of disinfectants like chlorine and chloramine in regular tap water, or has it been a steady presence? So do you just see more of forever chemicals ending up in water?
Yes. I mean, we're seeing. I mean, chloramine was, about 10 years was like 30% treatment in the water supply, and places like Canada it wasn't used at all. Now we're up to over 50%. Like for the United States, it's like half and half. Chloramine's being used, and it's being the scary thing. Not the scary thing, but the interesting thing is you could have. We had a customer down by San Francisco area, down by Maria, that they were using chlorine in Mill Valley, and they switched to chloramine during the summer, and nobody knew that. They switched the water source, and the machine started having issues. So same thing on the East Coast, places like in Boston where chlorine was used, and now the chloramine's being used because of drought. We hear a lot about drought, but all those things, everything's cause and effect. When there's a cause and effect with nature, there is basically something has to step in. So yes, we are seeing more and more chloramine used in water treatment.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add is often my friends, I'm like the coffee doctor, or I go to stay with a friend on vacation, and my family's like, "Why are you getting up so early?" I'm like, well, they put us up. I at least need to clean and descale their equipment. And I have a good friend who's got a home on the Big Island of Hawaii, and they have a reverse osmosis system, but it clearly hadn't been recharged. And so I descaled their coffee brewer. It took one descale roll, but then like rinsing it 5 times because there was floaties coming out 5 times. And we had brewed coffee the first day, and it was just super flat because the water was not hot enough. And then it was just miraculous. Then the next day, the really nice coffee I brought to my friend's condo, it tasted as it should. So folks typically ask me, how often do I need to descale my home machine? And I live in San Francisco with, what Hetch Hetchy water comes into San Francisco, and some, like pretty easy going, not a lot going on. And And I descale my machine here probably once a quarter. And I do still find minerality. I just find it very meditative to watch the little, I have a clear, boiler, and I can see it coming. It's actually kind of fun. It's seeing it coming off of the metal. It's funny. But it depends on how, what you got going on. And it could be once a month. And I have, my father, as I was growing up, swore by using distilled vinegar in his coffee brewer.
Yep.
And certainly, I mean, that's a weak acid, right? You can use it, but that's a weak acid. It's also going to impart a vinegary smell in your machine. So I do recommend, we have our BioCaf line. It's an all natural line that you can use. We have it in liquid. It goes immediately into solution, or DesCal. Additionally, we work with all kinds of different home machines as well. And that's something to consider, as well as is if your manufacturer of your home espresso machine or your home brewer recommends a certain descaler. I do think you should use that one, because there are some brewers that use very soft metals. There are some machines that are made offshore using soft metals and plastics that perhaps don't stand up really well to an aggressive descaler. And so we have certain formulations that are that we do material compatibility to make sure that they're not going to wreck your machine.
I love that, Maria. Chris had a question, which is a segue into the next spot. Perfect timing. I think both of you talked about it. Let's say you're a new cafe owner, and you know food and cafes, but you may not, know Limescale and filtration. What are a couple simple steps they can use to prevent Limescale from the get-go, from the onset? Like, what can they do?
First thing is test the water, or have your local technician test your water. And if you
Yep.
don't feel comfortable testing it, you can have your local technician test it, or you can even order a water analysis. We actually offer that as well, and understand what's in the water at that present time. And then second thing is to basically talk to your local technician about what is the water filtration being used in the area. So you're not just, again, under filtering with a carbon filter, or over filtering with a very expensive reverse osmosis system that you may not need. So understanding what type of water you're dealing with and what's the right water filtration system. And if you've got questions, you can always reach out to Vivero. We've got a website, Vivero Professional Filter, and we're happy to answer questions. And if we don't have the answer, we can always ask our experts at the Water Lab in Germany.
One more question, which neither of you prepped for, but I trust you. I know you'll be able to answer it. If you're working with a food service consultant and they're designing a kitchen and break room or break room, at what point should filtration and or coffee be considered, spec'd in, as part of the plan? Should it be right when you're doing a combi oven, or is it after everything is done? Do you have
It
an
should be
opinion?
the earlier the better. I have walked into so many hotels and food service outlets, and they didn't spec out the filtration properly. The layout for the coffee bar is completely jacked up, and the electrical's never right. I figure my next life, I'm going to be an electrician. It's going to be great, because I think I really am one after 30 years. But the earlier the better, and the more that they can actually engage with real world baristas. I think that with FCSI, there should be more engagement with regards to operating professionals in that kitchen design, and how the coffee, tea, espresso is designed and laid out.
And
Sure,
then they should
Anastasia
ask
has
their
opinions.
manufacturer too. I mean, if, for example, manufacturers like Frankie Coffee Systems, they actually offer basically a water filtration option right out of the gate. So if your equipment, whether it's combi or coffee, is not basically giving you some direction on what water filter you might want to use, you might want to ask the question, is this the right piece of equipment? So making sure that you're working with the right piece of equipment that gives you some idea that they care about water, because that's another thing too. A lot of times
Yeah.
manufacturers will basically say, hey, operator, you're on your own for water filtration. And if they're truly your partner, they're going to basically give you some direction on what's the right water filter for this piece of equipment. Because we talk about, it's very complicated, metals, plastics, certain, things like chloride levels, for example. I'll use chlorides. Some metals, some pieces of equipment have a tolerance of chlorides between 50 to 200 parts per million. It will literally cause holes in the boiler. So you need to know what the tolerance level for the chlorides levels are. Those are questions that they should have answers to. Is it under 30 parts per million? Is it over 50 parts per million? Where is where do I, need to make sure I have the right water filter for a thing like chlorides? And that's questions that they should be able to answer.
Right. And let me add to that. That's perfect, Anastasia. I agree. We work with some of our partners who actually do write that it will invalidate the warranty if the machine is not properly filtered, right? And so therefore, I would be skeptical of an equipment manufacturer who is merely winging it in terms of filtration.
I would agree, Maria. Yeah, you don't want somebody winging it when you're at the office and just guessing. We have about 10 minutes. We had another question, which is it's just a perfect segue. In a situation where one doesn't know how sturdy the machine is it safe to use the BioCafe line if you don't know the setup?
Yeah, our BioCaf line is all natural. It's an all natural, phosphate free on the detergent side of things, and then for our descaling solution, it is a citric acid based product. But additionally, if that individual, I think we flashed my email address, you can certainly drop me a note, or you could send a note to info@urnex.com. Any questions that you may have with regards to the piece of equipment that you have and your options for descaling, certainly we'd be happy to support you.
I love that. Any other? Well, I'm not seeing any more questions. Anything else? We got about 10 minutes, Maria and Anastasia. I'll go back to you one more time. Is there anything we covered today that you want to continue to talk about? Anything we missed you felt was an important topic that we hadn't done quite yet?
I think Anastasia gave us the beginning with the water droplet and what is actually, what actually is Limescale and how it actually get. I like to say that Anastasia takes care of the water before it hits the machine, and I'm hoping that that everybody has learned a lot about what to do before it hits the machine, and then once it comes into the machine, it's my team is responsible to turn it into delicious beverages and keep it clean and sanitary so we don't get people sick with nasty milk systems and things of that nature. But where we like to shine at Urnex is being your value add partner. It's consultative, right? We embed ourselves with engineering staff members, and with our OEM partners. But additionally, one of my biggest sources of pride was right after the pandemic when I knew I wasn't going to die. One of our convenience store clients had a market that wasn't comping as much as the rest. So I put 600 miles on my car going to C-stores on their behalf. And it was miraculous what we found. There was a genius in their organization who allowed the franchisees to not change their water filters for 18 months. You can't unknow these things. And so it's, from my perspective, it's, no harm, no foul. Okay, nobody died because of the lack of water filtration. It was a hard time. And it was a learning though for that organization, like, wow, we need to take this seriously. And, there are other steps of service and some flat sides of their frontline training programs that we were able to uncover together. But that's actually that's a source of joy, and I think that's where Anastasia comes from as well, is the education in the marketplace of how to make your programs really deliver the top line sales and the repeat customers that you're seeking from these programs.
And what I'm hearing is you don't need a PhD in chemistry to run a
No,
cafe. You
no.
need to have a consultant who is passionate about whether it's filtration or coffee. You bring him in, you bring him to the table when you're building out a cafe with the food service consultant and the operator, because that's really important. And what I also heard you both say is once you're all set up, but again, you don't need that PhD to maintain the equipment, to make sure it's healthy and safe for your guests. Um, that it's pretty simple. It's just staying at
Yeah,
it, being
yeah.
mindful, and managing it.
One other thing I want to add is
Yep.
I'm actually editing today a preventative maintenance checklist that's going to be featured in the June-July version of Barista Magazine. It's an amazing checklist that actually folks can go online and download. It's a free resource that Urnex is supporting. It's a daily cleaning, weekly and monthly and every 6 months checklist that does also include the reminders of then your proper water filtration as well. So will be featured at Barista Magazine.
Thank you, Maria. Cannot wait. I cannot wait to read. You may have to help me because you're a lot smarter than I am with all those chemistry questions. But
And I'll just
um,
say, last time, like 98% of coffee is water. So if you are not sure about the water filtration that's on your machine, go take a look at it and take a picture of it, and let's get you a water test. If you're getting ready to open a cafe, let's get your water tested and figure out what's the right water filter, because it really, again, is the unsung hero of all the cafe, of what's happening with, for not just hot coffee, but also cold brew as well.
fantastic. Well, that's a perfect segue. Again, it's the timing has been perfect. We're going to wrap things up today. Maria, Anastasia, oh my gosh, thank you so much for your insight training and I guess sensei ways about Limescale prevention, how to keep your facility or location or restaurant up and going, and really simple steps that laymen and common people, people not in the coffee and water world, can absolutely apply to their own operations. So thank you to both of you for your expertise, and absolutely look forward to talking to you soon. If people want to reach out post this, how do they get in touch with you, Maria? How would one, if they had questions about today?
Sure. So they could just drop me a note at maria.cleveland@urnex.com. The last name is not spelled like the city. Maria, just like in West Side Story, dot CLEA, as in Victor, ELAND @urnex.com. So you can just drop me a note and I'd be happy to help out.
Yep, and
Perfect.
you can reach A Chovan, Chovan, at Vivreau, Vivreau.com. If you have any questions about water, or like a water test, or taking on the online water training, please reach out. Be happy to help. And thank you, David, for your leading us through this.
You bet. It's been a blast. And I can say before we go, these two amazing people, if you have a question, they will stop what they're doing. They will answer the question because they are so incredibly passionate about healthy water, healthy coffee, healthy machines, and a healthy experience. So Maria, Anastasia, you're the best. Let's do this again sometime soon.
And keep it
Thanks so
clean.
much.
Keep it clean. All right. See
Bye.
ya.
Bye.
Bye.